Okay, let's get right into it. The world is on high alert right now because Russia has just used a new, incredibly advanced hypersonic missile against Ukraine. And this wasn't just any strike. It was so significant that it's triggered an emergency meeting at the United Nations Security Council. The whole world is being forced to respond to this. And the reaction, well, it was swift and it was strong. The European Union immediately condemned the attack, calling it a clear escalation. This isn't being treated as just another attack in a long war. No, this is being seen as a dangerous new phase of the conflict. And today, we're going to break down exactly why. All right, first up, the event that set off all these alarm bells. We need to understand the attack itself, because this was not a routine bombardment. This was the debut of a weapon specifically designed to change the rules of the game. You know, what's so fascinating here is that the who, what, and where are pretty straightforward. We know Russia fired this new Oreshnik missile during a larger assault on western Ukraine. But the why, well, that's where the story gets really murky and dives headfirst into the world of information warfare. And this really lays it all out, doesn't it? It shows that information war happening in real time. On one hand, Russia is claiming this was direct payback for a supposed Ukrainian drone attack on one of Putin's homes. But on the other hand, Ukraine is saying no way, calling that justification a flat-out lie. So what we're left with are two completely opposite stories for why this massive escalation just happened. Which brings us to the missile itself. This attack has put the Oreshnik front and center on the world stage. So what exactly is this weapon? What makes it so different and, frankly, so terrifying? So the weapon is called the Oreshnik, which, believe it or not, translates to Hazel Tree. It's an intermediate-range hypersonic ballistic missile. The name might sound pretty harmless, but its capabilities are anything but. And here it is. This is the game changer. Pure speed. We're talking velocities of over Mach 10. That's more than 10 times the speed of sound. At speeds like that, the time an enemy has to detect a launch and then actually react to it shrinks to almost nothing. It's designed to just overwhelm air defense systems. So you take that incredible speed and you add in reports that it can maneuver in flight. And that's why President Putin can boast that it's impossible to intercept. But the threat doesn't even stop there. This is a dual threat weapon. It can carry a conventional warhead or a nuclear one. Now, this strike was conventional, but just knowing the nuclear option exists has a huge strategic impact, especially since this is only the second time we've seen it used. You know, using a weapon like this doesn't just create an explosion on the battlefield. It sends massive shockwaves through the halls of power all across the globe, and it puts an immense amount of pressure on alliances that have been in place for decades. The most immediate sign of that is this right here. The UN Security Council is calling an emergency meeting. That's a huge deal. It tells you just how seriously the international community is taking the arrival of this weapon on the scene. But of course, this is all happening against a really complex political backdrop. Just as this crisis is kicking off, a recent comment from US President Donald Trump has thrown another wrench in the works. He basically suggested that Putin sees the US and Europe very differently, that he fears one, but not the other. Now, analysis from sources like The Guardian suggests that this kind of talk really damages Western unity. It highlights potential cracks in the alliance at the exact moment a united front is needed most. And you have to assume that Moscow is watching this very, very closely. It's a massive shift from moments like after 9/11, when NATO's first and only instinct was to stand together with the US under Article 5. So while all this high-level strategy and politics is unfolding, we can't forget what's happening on the ground. It's so important to remember the devastating human cost for ordinary people, especially as they're trying to survive a brutal winter. The toll in Kyiv was immediate, and it was final. This wasn't some remote military installation. The missile hit the city. At least 4 people lost their lives. And on top of those killed, more than 20 other civilians were wounded. It's just a tragic, personal cost that so many families are now paying because of this one single attack. But the impact just ripples outwards. Nearly 6,000 apartment buildings were left without heat. And this is happening when temperatures are plunging to negative 15 degrees Celsius. It's a humanitarian catastrophe on top of an active war. So with a terrifying new weapon in play and alliances being stressed by political rhetoric, the big question is, how are European nations actually responding to this new reality? Well, we are seeing concrete action. The UK has already committed £200 million to prepare its troops for a possible deployment to Ukraine. And then you have Sweden investing a massive $1.6 billion in new air defense systems. That's a direct response to seeing how vulnerable civilian infrastructure is to these kinds of attacks. Okay, so let's boil this all down. What are the key things to take away from all this?
First, a new and very advanced weapon has entered the fight, and that has seriously escalated things. Second, this escalation comes with a severe human cost, making an already brutal winter that much harder to survive. And finally, this whole event is a massive stress test for the unity and the resolve of the entire Western alliance.
Which leaves us with this final, critical question. As these new, more dangerous weapons keep showing up on the battlefield, are the alliances that have defined the world for decades going to hold firm? Or are they going to start to fracture under the pressure? The answer to that is going to shape not just this conflict, but global security for a long, long time to come.